Hey, I'm Malcolm Durfee, and this is my presentation. What my presentation is about is the amount of NFL games in a regular season affecting individual team's winning percentage. What I mean by that is this year, 2021, Roger Goodell decided to add one more game to the 16-game era. So now they'll play 17 games in a season. And I was wondering how, as an NFL fan, how this is going to affect the data. So the way I did it was first I looked for a time, an era, suppose, where there was a different amount of games. And I found this in the 14-game era, before 1978. And I decided that I would pick a random team and I would analyze the data comparing the 14 to the 16-game era. So I began by putting all the teams into a hat. This hat, to be specific. And I picked one out, and that team happened to be Miami Dolphins. And then what I did was I randomly picked 3 seasons in the 14-game era, which was from 1967 to 1978. And then I picked 3 games in the after era, which is 1978 to now. And my plan was to basically compare the winning percentage of these seasons by using a difference of mean inference, specifically with independent samples. This is because the data is independent, it's not matched pairs, and I'm seeing if there's a difference between the amount of games in a season. This was the hat that I put the teams in. The data collection, I used profootballreference.com because it was the closest thing to raw data. NFL didn't have specific records like I needed them to of data from 50 years on. And then I took the wins and divided by the total number of games played in the regular season. Then I put that into Google Sheets. The setup and the hypothesis. The 3 seasons that random number generated selected are 1968, 1974, 1976. The other 3 seasons for the other era are 1980, 1983, 1999. First off, I have to set up the null hypothesis. HO, the null hypothesis. The Dolphins' winning percentage is not affected by the amount of games played in a regular season. The alternative hypothesis would be the Dolphins' winning percentage is boosted due to there being more games. Then I have to check the assumptions. The first assumption and the second is the data independent? It's pretty simple. The data is independent. The winning percentage of a certain season does not affect another certain season necessarily. And the data is random due to the random number generators and me picking out of the hat. The third assumption is there can't be any outliers, and I made a box and whisker plot of the dependent variable, which would be the winning percentage, and there in fact is no outliers. The fourth assumption is, are the differences normally distributed? Now this one was a little tricky because there's only 3 values, as you remember, because I have to measure the differences, right? There's only 3 differences because I picked 3 seasons. I didn't have enough time to do more seasons. So as you can see, it's not the most normal data possible. Some would argue it's not normal. But since I don't believe that it's uniform, I'm going to conclude that it's normal enough to go forward with this t-test. So I use this formula down here to find the t-score, and I found that the t-value is negative 0.67042, and the p-value is 0.26965. Thus meaning that the result is not significant enough to say that the amount of games affects the amount of wins a team has. Therefore, I believe that although there will be more games this year, it won't boost the winning percentages of any team. what I could have done more. There's so much things I could have done more with this if I had more time. If I had more time, I would have, for starters, would have done this test for all 25 teams that were present during the Super Bowl era. I'd look at every season for that team so I can get a dispersed amount of data, so I can be extra sure. And I would also have to pluck out the outliers for this, specifically being the 1972 Dolphins, I imagine, had a perfect season, and the 2016 Browns had a 0-16 season. So you'd have to get rid of these outliers, and you'd have to analyze the whole NFL as a whole instead of an individual team to understand this better. But I'm pretty happy from the conclusion that I got, because I got a P level that was way higher than any significance level possible, and I believe there was no outliers, all the assumptions were met, and I think my conclusion's pretty strong.